Good day everyone, I'm Jean. I used to live and study in the City of Adelaide, and I'm here to discuss all things environments with the Lord Mayor. I'm going to focus my questions on environments this time. So as climate change is a very pressing issue, what is the city priority for environments?
Well, I think historically the council has been focused on energy transformation and moving into renewable energy, and that's really come on the back of what happened when I was in Parliament, because the Rand government introduced a series of climate legislation that set up wind farms and solar resources, and that has made it really easy for South Australia then to move into a renewable world. But I think from the point of view of the council, our control of this area is relatively limited.
True.
And the things that we have to recognise is that we may not be able to arrest climate change, and we have to be realistic and work out how we get to a stage of climate resilience.
Yeah.
So I've been very critical of the council, who've traditionally been planting trees in the parklands. Lovely to plant trees, great idea, but it's not going to help the city. And we have very sophisticated heat maps that show us which parts of the city have got hotter and which have got cooler. Now I can see my garden actually got cooler because we planted a lot of trees, but the reality is that in terms of sustainability, the city will not be habitable if we get to 50 degrees.
Yeah.
So we need to really make sure that every development has a veranda, as far as I'm concerned. We need to make sure that there are trees in every street, there are green walls, there are green roofs.
Yep.
And people, I love that line, when's the right time to plant a tree? It was always yesterday. And I think the thing is that we were criticised for an assessment that it would cost $20,000 to plant a tree in a city street, because you always have to move the underground cables and pipes and everything. But the reality is if we don't do it, nobody will be able to walk to the shops. And then our businesses will suffer. But the other issue is residential, because not everybody wants to live in an air-conditioned high-rise building. And one of the things that makes cities habitable is the notion that it cools down at night. And having the right kinds of trees will help the city cool at night. In our heat maps, which are show a diurnal rhythm, we can see that North Adelaide does cool down and the square mile doesn't. And that's a really telling piece of data, because it proves we haven't done well enough in the square mile.
That's right.
And that's where the growth is in residents. And we want those residents not just to be in a high-rise building with air conditioning. We want them to walk around the streets, go to the restaurants, go to the cafes, and spend money to support our businesses. So planting trees is really essential. Probably the other climate resilience issue is dealing with flooding and water issues, because we can be sure there'll be more rain and there'll be more storms and there'll be more adverse weather events, so that we have to make sure that's effective, as well as making sure that for people who may be homeless or poor, there are places they can go that are cooler in very hot weather. The other half of sustainability that I feel strongly about is I recently spoke at a conference in Paris, of all places. Unfortunately, I was in Adelaide, but I spoke online, and it had a wonderful title. It was called Sobriété, which means sobriety in French. And I don't think there's any market for sobriety in Australia, but we call it we can call it sustainability or whatever else you like to call it. But what was interesting was I was talking about recycling heritage buildings to avoid the loss of embedded energy. But they had other speakers talking about fast food, fast fashion, fast furniture. So you know about fast fashion, throwing things away, but also you have to think of fast furniture. Because where there are 60% of our residents in the city who are in rental accommodation, that's often unstable, and they move every couple of years, and they throw away their flat pack furniture with all the energy that's in it. So we have to find a way of recycling furniture so that we don't have a fast furniture landfill problem. And of course then there's we know about fast fashion and fast food, food miles. I mean, all those things are important if we want our community to be sustainable.
So residential, planting trees, and then fast furniture,
and
that's really cool.
and heritage recycling.
That is important.
Yes. finding ways to make old buildings live again.
Yeah.
Because demolishing buildings and putting the material into landfill is a really stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
So.
So, what are like the top 3 things you wish to see our residents start incorporating into their lifestyles to help the city to be
Well, I think that
resilient?
one of the simplest things people can do is walk and cycle.
True.
And I think that we need to have a city that's safe enough to feel you can do that. And I'd also think that we should have a system whereby if we're struggling because people aren't going back to the office because they're working from home, if more people live in the city, they can work from home in the city and still support cafes and restaurants and shops. Because what's happening now is that people are spending 1 or 2 days a week in some suburb and shopping and spending money in their shops, whereas we would like them, if they lived above the shops in Adelaide, they would be spending their money in town. That keeps everyone employed.
I like the idea of recycling and like going to op shops. Do you have any favorite op shop?
Well, there are 2. There's Dulce's in Adelaide Arcade, but I also go to one in the West End that's in Grey Street, called the French Laundry.
I heard of that.
It's in Grey Street, and I've actually bought some amazing clothes in there. They're quite fashionable and expensive.
Yeah.
And they've got some amazing, if you've got little feet, they've got some amazing shoes last time I went in there that were really expensive shoes that they'd acquired that had never been worn, never got out of their boxes. But what I do with my clothes is I never throw my clothes away. But when you've spent a lot of money on clothes, I go to the dry cleaners in Adelaide Arcade and get them reshaped. So they might turn something into a shirt that used to be a dress, or they might cut the arms off, or I never throw anything away because the buttons have been lost or the hem's wrong. I get everything altered, so it all gets a second life.
Yeah.
And most of what I used to throw away had a hem that had fallen down, or a button missing, or had shoulder pads that weren't fashionable. So all you have to do is take it to a proper dressmaker and get it turned into something else.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because if you buy something that costs a decent amount of money and has fabulous fabric, and you love the fabric, and it feels nice and it looks nice, it never goes out of fashion. It just has to be reshaped.
That's right. Most of the time I probably just hide it in the closet.
That's mad. And also in Adelaide Arcade there is an amazing button shop. And you can always buy the buttons that can change the look. Then take it to the dry cleaners next door and get them to sew it on.
Like imagine if we are in 2050, how does a sustainable home look like to you?
Well, I think that my home is getting there anyway. I've got a massive solar system on my roof. I have 6 trees in my garden, and I have a veggie patch in the back lane. Our house is just as sustainable as is possible now. I think the challenge for 2050 is that not many people have the opportunity to have a garden as I do. So it is much more difficult in an apartment. But I think that if you are not driving every day, if you're walking and keeping fit, then you as a person are sustainable, particularly if you look after your energy consumption as an individual.
So as a PhD candidate, I really love how vision become reality. And I'm just wondering if there's any projects that council is working with the uni.
Well, actually, I'm really obsessed by evidence and data. And one of the tragedies of public life is that so many things are called a pilot study but have no proper assessment. So where I've started a new project in council, like the refit refurb strategy, I've insisted we get data at the beginning, because if you don't get the data right at the beginning, you can't do it at the end. And so we've worked with the university and we've actually done several things. Firstly, we've worked with the professor in charge of a major ARC grant in housing, and we've worked with her department and made sure that she is in at the beginning to tell us how to collect the right data. We've also thought that there are opportunities for early career researchers and graduates in in the council. So we've actually got a program for early career graduates to work in the council so that they get a start in their life. But I was keen to use students as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things I dislike about the way some organisations use students is they use them as cheap labour. And it seems to me that I think we have a huge opportunity to have them on an internship or a project, but actually pay them. Because if you have a bright young mind, I don't want a student to work for us for nothing and then have to be up all night working at a bar. I feel really strongly that it's immoral. So fortunately our project with the refurb, we are paying an honours student to actually do the research, and that means that they get an income.
I think strongly agree with that. Really, thank you for all your insights. I really love talking to you.
It's great to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank
Good luck
you.
with your PhD.
Oh, thank you so much.